Welcome to Unraveling the Brain with Dr. Josh Madsen. Today we have a special guest, the founder of the brain health movement in the UK, Lucia Silver. She is here with her son Quinn, and I'm super excited to share you guys a story with her and also give a resource for you guys it's really a parent-led courses, parent-led group to help parents that have children that maybe struggling a little bit more of, number one, how to cope with it. Number two, how to help them to start to develop. So I'm super excited to introduce Lucia to you. We have a great conversation today, and let's jump into it. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here. This is incredible. I'm actually here in front of you. I've been looking at you in a screen for nearly a year. I've traveled thousands of miles to see the real embodiment of Dr. Joshua Madsen. Here you are. You're real.
Yep, for sure. I am a real person. Well, we're excited to have you. We're excited to have your son here, and you've talked over and over and over again about Quinn's journey online, and for anyone that's watching, go into her social media, go into her courses. They're actually for a parent, I think they're one of the best courses that I've ever seen, because it's not only breaking down the complex science, but also breaking it down in a way that's really easy to understand, in a way that I can't do it nearly as efficiently, but a way that's really easy to understand, and I think it's going to be super, super helpful for a lot of parents. So thank you for making the course, number one, the taster course and the teaser course there, and then we're working on helping to make another course for you for parents as well, which I'm super excited about. But give us a rundown of, we've been chatting back and forth for the last year, but give us a rundown of what brought you here, and maybe a little description in your own words about, number one, the brain health movement, and then we'll get into what brought you here and your story and go from there.
Well, it's a very personal story, as I'm sure it is for so many mums, dads, and carers listening. This is my little boy, Quinn. The journey began, as many of you will have experienced, with speaking to lots of educators and doctors and specialists and pediatric experts about my son's tic, and not getting any feedback at all, either being told that this very serious and increasingly worsening tic, or STIM, would go away, and seeing him further disconnected, further distressed, further emotionally dysregulated, with no support for him or for me. I felt like I was going crazy. I felt very isolated. I felt overwhelmed. And I was deeply worried for his future. And I started searching, and I started studying. And initially I found out about primitive reflexes, but there wasn't really any body or educational establishment or medical establishment that could then support that really in the UK. There was one organization that I did some fantastic training with, which is called EVO, but subsequent to that, there was nothing there at all. So I started looking further afield. I looked at a little bit of work around Dr. Melillo. I looked at, of course, our very own Sally Goddard Blythe. And I read, and then I came across you. And when I came across the work that you've been doing, I realized that there was a much bigger picture. For sure, the foundational systems are important.
Yep.
But there was a lot that needed to be combined with that. And with that guidance, I started to work on Quinn's primitive reflexes at home.
Yep.
With limited supervision at that stage, but I saw such extraordinary results that I felt that this information was going to make a radical difference to many people's lives. And it was certainly something that the educational establishment needed to understand, but for sure it was something that parents needed to understand.
Yep.
All I could see was a lot of medication going on around me, and a lot of distress and lack of answers, and a lot of what we would call top-down approach. So therapies that were helping to some extent, but really missing the fact that certain key milestones in development had been missed. So my feeling was, why has this happened? Has this happened because the information isn't out there? Probably yes. Has this happened because the information that is out there maybe isn't being communicated in a way that is accessible and digestible and kind and compassionate and delivered in a way that another mother just like me is pushed, running around, trying to run life at home, but really is alone. Mm-hmm. So how can this be delivered in a way that makes them feel that they really can do this? So that was when the brain health movement was born. That was when I felt I'd found, I suppose personally for me, my passion and my purpose to be in service came together. This was a moment where I could really deliver some value as someone who's always been able to communicate quite clearly, and as a mum. Yeah. Simply that, as a mum. So this information is being distributed through the brain health movement. As you've said, we've created a podcast called My Mighty Quinn, which you've been on. And we've had Sally Goddard-Blythe from the UK. We've had some functional medicine experts. And you'll be recommending some more of your team that we can do further podcasting with. We have free guides. We have the online course that you've mentioned. And we have our Facebook group, which I think is also really important. You'll appreciate, Dr. Josh, that community is a huge part of this as well.
For sure.
That mothers, parents and carers can come in and see you. They can have treatment super effectively. But then they need to go home and they need to keep going.
Yep.
And there is a real need to have your tribe around you. Other people who understand, other people who are doing this work as well. There's only so much magician work that you can do here through your incredible understanding and the incredible work. But it has to be continued at home, doesn't it? It has to be continued at home. So this
it's a true developmental process. Like it's not a quick fix. It's not, there's things that should have developed really early on that didn't develop. Movement didn't develop appropriately. Balance didn't develop appropriately. And you got to work through those reflexes. You got to work through development or balance development, eye tracking development, and that takes time. And it needs to be supported with all the other systems that play into it. But it's a true developmental process.
Right. Yeah. And you're looking at a child who might be 9, might be 7, might be 15, and you're expecting to see results in a week. That's many years of dysfunction that needs to be unpacked and packaged up again in a way that is correct and efficient.
Yeah.
So, I feel that community is a big part. We need to support parents to do best by their children.
For sure.
So, there's 100%. The story.
Love the story. I love it. So we get to see Quinn this week, and it's been so much fun. Just such a blast, such a great kid. Very witty and very fun. So what I would ask you is, just from a parent's perspective, because, what has been different about our office in relation to maybe other things you've done, other things you've seen, other programs you've looked into? What have been the big differences with, coming here and just in being here, and give us a rundown of that.
Where to start? It almost makes me want to cry because, first of all, I think this is one of the kindest places I have ever been. Truly connected and kind. And I always say in business that you need to look at the top to understand why everyone within the culture of a business behaves a certain way. It's why our medical systems, our educational systems are at fault because of the information that they're given at the top. And I have to say, in all credit to you, you are at the top of this organization and the kindest, truly kind man. And that is reflected through absolutely everyone here, from your front reception to your doctors, the nurses, the video teams, absolutely everyone. So first of all, thank you for that, because it is a hugely unrecognized quality within medical care. In Britain, we call it bedside manner. Mm-hmm. But, where's the compassion? It's very easy to have compassion fatigue as a doctor when you are seeing the same problems in and out. So first of all, this is a heart-led operation here, and that means the world to me. I don't want to be sending our parents anywhere where that isn't where this begins. Are you aligned in service? Are you here to really, really help children, or is this a profit center? And I have only seen authentic, kind, passionate individuals working here. So I really need to say that first, because that's super important. Secondly, It is as state-of-the-art as anything I have ever experienced. I knew there'd be lasers, and I knew there'd be some gadgets, and I knew there'd be some fantastic games and technical stuff and oxygen tanks and so forth, but it really is extraordinary in terms of using all the different modalities and sensory input. It's all here, which makes sense of why an intensive program really can deliver. There is no way you could replicate this part of it at home.
Right.
I also think that each of the doctors, and sometimes there are doctors and there are some that have come from other disciplines as well, but it's wonderful that you might have one of your staff has come from optometry and is doing work in a chiropractic center. Another member of your staff has come from a more neurology background. Another member of staff has come from maybe nursing and education.
Yep.
And they're all being trained in the functional neurology and functional medicine specialities. And what that means is that you are pooling, as we would say in Britain, pooling a huge amount of talent and expertise from many, many, many disciplines, concentrated here into being able to understand every single possible comorbid, intricate issue that could be affecting your child. So it feels like no stone is left unturned. That's what it feels like. I feel safe here. With all my crazy studying, I can't bring anything up that someone doesn't go, I know about that in diet, I know about that in gluten, I know about that in, So that is fantastic. That's a super powerful thing you have.
For sure. We're very, very, very blessed with our team. Truly very blessed. So yeah, it's such, from a business owner, and from a, head doctor aspect, it's so nice to be able to say, I can have them see this person or this person or this person or this person and know that they're going to always get the best care that can be delivered. And also with maybe a slightly different perspective, where like Dr. Ryan may work with them and he has a physical therapy background. He sees things just slightly different than I do. But that strengthens us. It doesn't divide us. It makes us stronger. And, and then teaching them to think as they're working with those patients, of seeing how they're changing and working through all these complex situations and truly monitoring what they're seeing in each day and making changes based off of that. And I can trust my team to do that, which is a phenomenal blessing. So big question is, and actually the most important question is, what does Quinn think of it here?
Oh, I'm not going to get him back to the UK. That's what Quinn thinks. He absolutely loves it. He said to me on the way in this morning, Mummy, I can't even put all those doctors in order because I love them all so much. I think that's what I was talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
When it's heartfelt and it's passionate, it is children. There's no, excuse my language, but there's no BS with children. They feel and see everything authentically.
Yep.
They just speak it out if it doesn't feel right. Quinn looks forward to coming in. He adores you. He was so excited to meet you, but he loves your team.
Yeah.
It's fun. And I think what we also don't realize as parents, I didn't realize, is how important the context of these children learning and changing is. If it's not fun for them, you're going to be shifting stuff up weight for a very long time.
Yep.
If in their minds this is something that they enjoy and they can relate it to, in Quinn's case, football improving his soccer playing, as you guys would say, then it is everything to him.
For sure.
So your staff are very quick to get to know what motivates Quinn, what excites Quinn, what engages Quinn, and then the activities are all very cleverly oriented towards, this will be better for your balance in football. This vestibular work's going to help you with your tackling. This, which is super smart,
Yep, for sure.
So, yeah.
Take what the kid enjoys and try to make him better at it. It's easy. And it'll cross over to every other aspect of life. So, okay, so, I've actually known you for probably about the last year, and I've been monitoring Quinn's case as we go along here, and, just our conversations back and forth as we met, a year ago and did some podcasts, and just, you've obviously asked questions here or there as things have changed in his care, and we ended up figuring out, as we went through, that not only did he was having tics and repetitive activity, but we also ended up figuring out that he had PANDAS, and he had a neuroautoimmunity that was really underlying mechanism that was triggering a lot of this, and the we ended up figuring out that he had some mold toxicities and some, some other infections going on and things like that. So maybe walk us through your experience of like just trying, because this is if you don't know this, or if a lot of people don't know this, this is actually kind of challenging to find someone that maybe even knows anything about this or knows anything to do with it. So I would like to just get your experience of maybe what your start of figuring this out with what was going on with him, and the different providers that you've seen to help with this, and maybe give a resource for, from a parent going to another parent, if their kid's having a lot of these weird symptoms, maybe here's some other avenues that you can look into to get some answers.
For sure. And it's certainly something I think that we should we will be adding to the complete course, is autoimmunity. It's a whole area that parents are less aware of. But for sure, having got Quinn's tic pretty much under control, which was miraculous, and the changes you can listen to on our podcast that were extraordinary for Quinn.
Primarily through working on primitive reflexes.
Primarily through working
on,
yes,
yep.
and core stability and eye convergence work as well. But yes, all of those things. He was pretty much transformed. A matter of about 4 or 5 months later, Quinn suddenly started having some seizures and was becoming very, very dysregulated, super unhappy, distressed, not all right in himself. And I reached out to you again, didn't I? Mm-hmm. And I said, I don't understand what's happening here. And I spoke to a number of different providers again, the GP and his teachers, who are like, Quinn's just not like himself. What on earth is going on? He's just overnight changed. He was quite aggressive, reactive, found it very difficult to calm down. Nothing we'd really seen at that level at all. Mm-hmm. And so I reached out to you, didn't I? I was in a lot of distress on the phone and I couldn't work out what on earth was going on. And you said to me, I think there's a trigger here somewhere. I think there's something that is creating this. We could be looking at some sort of autoimmunity against the brain. We could be looking at something in this area, which meant nothing to me at that stage, but in typical fashion, I dove in again and started reading and researching and found experts in different areas. But still, I was like, I need to get to Dr. Josh. I really need to understand this more and more. At the same time, and other parents will relate to this, Quinn was struggling more and more in school. Mm-hmm. He regressed probably 2 or 3 years. It was like his handwriting was a 6-year-old instead of a 9-year-old. He couldn't sit still in class. And then there was an explosion of motor tics, so vocal tics, as well as other movement tics. And then the original tic came back. Yep. And he was getting more and more distressed. And school were calling me during the day saying, I don't know if we can keep Quinn in school. He's disturbing all the other children. He's not like himself. We don't really understand. And I started then to talk about PANDAS. I started to talk about this condition to his GP, to some even people within the pediatric community, and nobody knew what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. I have to say at this point, this is where, again, with the brain health movement, as a parent, I think I got pretty unwell at this point. I think I had a traumatic response to it too. For sure. PTSD, seeing your child suddenly like Jekyll and Hyde overnight is the most frightening thing. And it's not talked about enough. I think there's been one article in the UK that came out about a month ago that said, what's this terrifying psychiatric disorder raging the nation with our children? But with no satisfactory explanation again.
And for people that don't know what this is, so PANS or PANDAS, PANS is Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. That typically, I may not give it correct definition here, but it's basically an autoimmunity that it starts really quickly, typically overnight. A lot of times, if it's PANDAS, it'll be associated with strep, but you can have other triggers. But it happens really pretty quickly. There's like a switch. But then also on top of that, it typically will have behavioral dysregulation, OCD, anxiety, tics, repetitive activities that all start right around the same time there. So just so people are aware, it's a form of autoimmunity against the central nervous system and against the brain, specifically, primarily the basal ganglia for the most part. So sorry, keep going.
And sometimes it's referred to as basal ganglion encephalitis. Yep. We hear about it as well, and when you can find the source. So yes, we went to one of the only UK experts on PANDAS, which I discussed with you that I was going to go and do. However, the modalities or the vehicles that are used in conventional medicine are really only antibiotics. So they will treat the infection, but they don't help treat the endemic autoimmune condition. So although perhaps taking some antibiotics at that point, because Quinn's system was full, we found a mycotoxin trigger, a mold. We found mold in his environment, which was perhaps what tipped the load, or as you say, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yep.
There was really nothing more that was offered in the UK beyond offering Quinn some antibiotics. So it settled him a little bit,
Yep.
but it really wasn't enough. And we needed to work more by doing some more blood tests that you had advised, which we did manage to do in the UK, and looking more into his gut dysbiosis, what was going on in, which I will leave to you to explain more clearly, but around leaky gut and what might have been breaking through the blood-brain barrier and causing a little bit more dysregulation throughout Quinn's system. So we started to address his diet long distance with you. We took some foods out of his diet that were inflammatory, and we started looking at some pretty heavy-duty supplementation to help him, again, under your guidance. And we started to see him come out of what is called a flare with PANDAS. And he settled back into school more comfortably for the last few weeks, which was a huge relief, because as a parent, your child not being able or almost being thrown out of school is devastating. Quinn's always been much loved, seen as you've said, witty, funny, cute, lovable, incredibly sensitive child, always looking out for the other kids that need help. So this was devastating. But it sort of started to really settle, but I knew we still needed to get to the nugget of a lot of this.
Yep.
So yeah, that's...
And I often just talk about when this is going on is I almost find that it's never one thing. Like it's almost never just the strep. It's almost never just the mycotoxin. It's always a combination of things like that are creating underlying inflammation. And as that inflammation grows, as inflammation goes up, our immune system gets overactive, which can trigger more autoimmunity. As autoimmunity gets worse, it triggers more inflammation, and we get a perpetual cycle there. But like even something as simple as a food sensitivity can create inflammation, but that alone won't cause this. But then if on top of that you get an infection, then on top of that, maybe you get two infections. You get strep, and then you get mycoplasma, and then you get a viral infection, and then they get a mycotoxin on top of that. And
there's food still problematic.
Yeah. Yep, they have glyphosate in their system, and then they're stressed out. One of the biggest triggers for this is just stress. School. Yeah. Like a kid goes to school and they're stressed, they can't focus. Now the teacher's on top of them and saying you need to focus, which can be stressful for a kid. And that all those things combine to create a perfect storm. Yeah, perfect storm of stuff that I remember you saying to me,
stress is inflammatory.
Yeah, stress is inflammatory.
Yep.
It shuts down our frontal lobes. We can't create impulse control at that point, and it becomes just a perfect storm of situations that really kind of, what's the right words here?
Well, the straw that broke the camel's back.
Exactly.
Right? And it's this idea of the whole toxic load, I think, is really helpful. It's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this, and then finally Quinn's system just went, I had enough. Yeah. And that seizure was like what would you call it? Like just a shutdown.
Yep.
Can't deal with this anymore. And that was really the loudest signal. But we really want parents to understand this before children end up in this state. What changes can we make to diet, to your environment, to your intake on screens, to your sleep patterns? Increase your movement, get exercising, make sure your kids have got strong cores and ability to balance. Look back at those milestones, right? Look back and see, did they miss their crawling? Doctors nowadays will say to you, it doesn't matter, it's getting broader and broader. It doesn't matter if your kid doesn't crawl until X age, 6 months later than is on. But you would say it does matter, right?
Very important. There's just a normal developmental process that needs to happen, and it needs to happen relatively close to, the original timelines, and it's supposed to happen in a very specific sequence because that's how we develop our brain, is through movement. I mean, we're the only species on Earth that walks on 2 feet all the time. And we are the only ones that have fully developed frontal lobes to do complex things like communication. and develop speech and all that type of stuff. Our brain developed through movement. Well, if we don't develop that movement efficiently, we don't develop all that, we don't go up against gravity at the appropriate timing, we don't develop smooth, efficient movement, we do not develop our frontal cortex to the highest level that it needs to be to function well. So
absolutely. And on top of that, I didn't even know, aside from not understanding the importance of movement, we're not born with a fully developed brain. Our brain is 25% formed when we're born, which shows you that 75% of what needs to happen for our children happens after you give birth.
Yep.
And therefore, there is a succession of things that mandatorily need to happen for that brain to grow healthily.
Yes.
And we are not told that as mothers, fathers, those months of gestation while you're sitting there not feeling yourself, you could be learning this, before you give birth, but we don't know.
100%. And just a quick kind of tip here for anyone listening to be, if they are in that scenario is, they should be army crawling right around, anywhere between 4 to 6 months. They should be crawling right around 6, 7 months on their hands and knees, maybe up to 8 months. And they should walk right around their first birthday. If those are really far off, maybe they walk really early around 9 or 10 months, that's not a great sign. That means that something didn't develop in the appropriate sequence, or maybe they didn't army crawl, or maybe they crawled and it should be nice, smooth, rhythmic crawl, both sides. They shouldn't be dragging a leg around, scooting on their bottom, and they shouldn't be walking super early or super late. Those are all signs that things just aren't quite clicking into place appropriately. And at that age, it is so easy to reinforce normal development. And when you do that, kids just do so much better long term. So.
Absolutely. And I think there's a really unhelpful thing that goes around now with mothers and educators and parents, fathers saying, it's individual. Just, as and when, it's absolutely fine. My kid's different. Well, that really is unhelpful, right? Yeah. It's unhelpful to be making it as sort of sloppy as it doesn't matter when this or this happens. It is absolutely categoric. I say to a lot of my to our parents and our followers, you wouldn't take an animal into the vet and if it had a dragging back right leg or it hadn't learned to walk yet, the vet wouldn't go, oh, don't worry, your dog's individual. Just wait another 6 months. You'd go, but every single dog comes out the womb, starts suckling from its mother for this long, starts walking at this point, starts barking at this point. You'd never go to the vet and go, oh, do you know what? Yeah, my dog's really individual. I'm going to wait 1.5 years on that.
Yeah.
If you think of it that way, how nature or how God or how it was intended is very precise. We are an extraordinary mechanism as human beings. It's been perfectly engineered, and we need to get out of the way and allow it to happen properly.
100%. And the only time that I would say that time frame is individualized is if they've had a severe injury. If they've had, but even then, like even kids that have had the most severe injuries, yes, that time frame is delayed or it's off. Maybe they're born really premature and had all these different complications, right? They still need to go through that. They still need to go through that normal sequence of they need to be on their belly lifting their head. They need to learn to roll. They need to learn to army crawl, then walk. And anytime when we're skipping that, we are fundamentally not creating a good foundation.
Yeah.
And even if that kid is, maybe they are 5 years old and they had a severe brain injury at birth and they never went through that, that's where you start working through that normal developmental sequence. And that's where we've seen the best success is by working through those
and you
normal
can still
patterns.
See improvements even if that has been the case.
Exactly.
So with Quinn, if we go through what you've been able to do for him at Infinity, it's been incredible. We know, first of all, that Quinn had a traumatic birth.
Mm-hmm.
So his story began perhaps there with some antibiotics, with his head being jiggled round quite a lot, which we think might have led to some
abnormal movement, abnormal
range
function.
of motion restriction, which in turn meant that his primitive reflexes may not have been able to be integrated in the normal way.
Yep, because they developed through normal movement.
How would you talk us through this incredible work that you've just done with Quinn and what you've been doing in order to do exactly what you've just said, take him back again?
Yep. So
back to birthright.
Yeah. First and foremost, you guys put in the majority of the groundwork by getting rid of primitive reflexes. He came, he had just a tiny bit of a response to those, which we just kind of finagled those a little bit and got rid of those. But then, like, our movement develops these reflexes. These reflexes develop other areas of our brain, primarily our cerebellum. Our cerebellum coordinates our movement, makes it look smooth, makes it look efficient. It coordinates the rest of our brain too, because it's literally like 80% of the neurons in our brain are in our cerebellum. But what we ended up finding out at this point was you guys have done all that groundwork, but then what's the next system that needs to develop? And that's our vestibular system. Our vestibular system, our balance centers, also feed into that cerebellum to help it to grow and mature and develop. And so that's really the big thing that we had to work on this week was retraining his balance. Like, and we can put a pre and post video in here of like, he couldn't balance one foot in front of the other one, and he couldn't track his eyes at all. He couldn't close his eyes and balance at all. And, you know, that's really what we focused on rehabbing, number one. And then number two is motor planning and slowing his brain down to create appropriate executive functioning and motor planning skills. And so that's what we've been working on a lot with him this week.
And what's executive functioning?
Like higher cognitive functioning of being able to stop, think, create a reaction. Stop, think, create a reaction.
But it also affects attention, concentration, memory, organization.
Yep. Yeah. So for like example, we use these, what they're called blaze pods. We can put up a bunch of different colors on it, and we say, okay, you can only hit the blue one. You can't hit any of the other ones. And so, that's number one. You start there, and they have to stop, think, okay, blue, stop, think, blue. Then we start adding complexities to it of you need to hit the blue and red one. Well, you can only hit the red one with your left hand. You can only hit the blue one with your right hand. So it makes them stop, think, okay, this hand, stop, think, this hand. Those are really frontal lobe tasks where they have to stop, think, motor plan, create a reaction. And so we've been working on just speeding that process up. And so not only are we working on that motor coordination aspect, that highly cerebellar aspect, but also adding in a lot of cognitive processes to start to activate his frontal lobe, because his cerebellum and his frontal lobe are the two main areas of the brain that regulate our basal ganglia in the center of our brain. So we want to get those as efficient as possible by using these motor-based activities so that way he can start to regulate.
And that stops the tics through the basal ganglia, as well as regulating the emotions, as well as helping with attention, organization, memory, and so forth. It's both in a sense that you're
They're very important areas of the brain for all of those things.
And I have to say that just since, as you say, the short time we've been here, even receiving more complex instruction, when you were throwing that, I don't know what it is, but it's got it's got a blue end, a white end, and a red end, and you were like, okay, I'm going to throw this at you, Quinn, now, and you got to I want you to catch the blue with your left hand, the red with your right hand, and the white with both hands.
Yep.
Normally, Quinn would have gone, what? Yeah. And you'd have had to repeat the instructions as well. He wouldn't have processed that information efficiently. But I noticed after only 4 days of being here, 5 days, he took the instructions and was like left, right, like a little ninja. He did pretty well with that. He'd normally be quite confused and not so coordinated. So there's an outcome. I know you're very outcome driven here. Right?
Even the first day, like just saying, hey, show me your right hand. That was even like, you could tell he had to think about it. Versus this time, it's like, grab with your right hand, and then, he repeats it, right hand. And he knew it right away, instantly.
Yeah.
But it's just activating those weak areas allows for the brain just to function that much more efficiently. All the information's in there. It's just getting to it.
Yes. And the laser work has been incredible.
Yeah. Lasers are great. They do a lot of stuff. They increase blood flow to the brain. They increase ATP through cytochrome C oxidase by upregulating our electron transport chain. Tons of research on that. Even there's research coming out that they increase stem cell activity, increase neurogenesis, which is unbelievable. And there's still a lot more research to be done on that end, but it's really, really cool.
What's neurogenesis? Is that different from neuroplasticity?
New neurons.
New neurons as opposed to...
genesis of creating neurons.
And neuroplasticity is more the connectivity of the neurons, right?
Connectivity of networks that are fired together, they start connecting. So neurons that fire together, wire together, that's neuroplasticity. Yep. So,
and also for the inflammation and for the antimicrobials, the lasers have a fantastic effects. If someone's having problems on their gut, I noticed you putting it on Quinn's gut as well as the areas of his cerebellum.
Yeah. Yep. Since we already know that he has gut dysregulation, dysbiosis, meaning he doesn't have good bacterial species in there, some fungal overgrowth, that type of stuff, we can use lasers to push blood flow, promote blood flow, to promote healing, simply put. And then also violet lasers have been shown to have an antimicrobial effect, meaning they help to kill off infectious agents. So that's another big benefit of using those types of lasers and having multiple different lasers is we can do stuff to promote blood flow. We can do stuff to kill infections. We can use them in those ways as well, or to help the body to, eliminate those as efficiently as possible. Yeah.
And you were using those on joints as well because there's inflammation or in some cases range of motion, which prevents a child from being able to integrate their primitive reflex because they can't actually move in the way that they need to.
Correct.
The lasers were helping there as well?
Yeah. So we can use them to help increase mobility, which is fantastic. But then also especially with PANDAS, strep-induced stuff, they can get a lot of joint pain.
Quinn has a lot of joint pain.
Yep. Exactly. And lasers have been shown to decrease inflammation by increasing blood flow and circulation and allowing the immune system to do its job more efficiently. So that's another great benefit is we all the time have kids that have had, rheumatoid arthritis or have had different pain issues from inflammation. And it's just a really valuable tool for being able to calm that inflammation and having an evidence-based approach to be able to use to help those kids. It's really, and it's safe.
And it's safe.
Super effective.
And you're using oxygen as well. That was something that I forgot to mention in being so impressed arriving here. Is all the different functions. I mean, the production of energy can be very inefficient for these children. Cold fingers, cold toes, which Quinn often has, not producing energy efficiently. So you use oxygen here as well.
Especially when kids have blood flow issues, have something called hypocapnia, where basically they're not getting blood flows to the tips of their fingers, tips of their toes. They're also likely not getting blood flow to the tips of their brain either. So and also look at their pulse oxygen, look at their oxygen saturation of the amount of oxygen they have in their system. When that's low, we can utilize oxygen in multiple different ways to help get them more oxygen in their system, because for us to produce ATP or energy, we have to have oxygen. It's 100% oxygen dependent. Well, if we don't have good breathing mechanisms, we don't have good blood flow, we're not getting oxygen to the brain and body for it to actually produce energy. So that's what it really helps with. And we use EWAT, we use, which is exercise with oxygen. We use hyperbarics if needed, and they're really, really effective and really helpful for just getting more energy. And that's one of the biggest issues for these kids is when their brain is inflamed, it dysregulates their whole system. They don't produce energy efficiently. And if we can just simply get them more energy, we can usually make a pretty significant change. So that's a big goal.
Because the body wants to heal.
Sure does.
This is something that I keep forgetting. We're not battling against something that doesn't want to happen.
Right.
The body wants to heal. We've just got to facilitate it,
just
remove the things that
resources.
are getting in the way. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. For sure, 100%. Well, I've loved this conversation. This is always fun. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, but we'll stop it here. And I just want to give everyone a reminder. If you're a parent that's working through some stuff, there's a group out here that would be really helpful for you to join with other parents, find new solutions, find other solutions, ask your questions in that group. That's the Brain Health Movement. Ask your questions in there. There's other people in there that have probably been through the same thing as you guys, or currently going through it, or have been through it, that have found answers and help, that things that may help your children. So that's a great parents group, and I'm super glad I got to introduce it to you guys if you haven't seen it already. So join that group, start learning how to help your kids, and it'd be a great resource for you guys.
Thank you.
Any closing thoughts?
Just keep doing what you're doing, Dr. Josh, please, because the world needs this, and I can't wait to start working on our complete course together, where we're going to bring all of Josh's incredible resources and information to you in a more complete and comprehensive way.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.